Greetings, everyone, those of you gracious enough to be gathered here, and all of you around the country. We're taping here on a beautiful autumn day. By the time you watch this, it will probably be in the dead of winter. But greetings to all of you. A couple of my friends advised me before this taping, be sure to smile. And I said, that's going to be a little difficult to do because my piece of this is what we can do to help promote the well-being of immigrants and comprehensive immigration reform, which is so needed in our country today. So I'll try to remember from time to smile, but it's a very serious topic that we're dealing with here. 2 days ago, on October 5th, I attended an interfaith Dream Sabbath prayer service. And it included Jewish, Hebrew, and Muslim and Christian prayer. And a young dreamer spoke to us about her experience, which could move one to tears in our current situation. And Joe Nangle, a Franciscan priest whom some of you know, reflected on the biblical imperative of addressing this issue. And also present was a staffer from Senator Dick Durbin's office, and Senator Durbin from Illinois is one who introduced the DREAM Act into Congress. And Joe Zogby, the staffer, who's a very strong supporter of DREAM, recounted last year urging senators to support the act before the December 2010 vote. And he said he never forgot that one senator responded to him that he would pray for the Dreamers, but he would not vote for the act. And Joe said this really struck him how contradictory it was. I will pray for them, but I will not act. So why should we, Sisters of St. Francis of Philadelphia and our companions, be acting on behalf of immigrants today? In addition to the biblical imperative, and you heard Father Rich give a very meaningful theological background on immigration, spirituality, and theology. But in addition to that, why should the Sisters of St. Francis of Philadelphia act on behalf of immigrants? I'd like to begin with the personal. For most of us in the community, our immigrant roots do not go back very many generations. Some of us were immigrants ourselves. Others are children of immigrants. Others of us, like myself, are grandchildren of immigrants or great-grandchildren of immigrants. Only one of us in the community, to my knowledge, is a Native American, an American Indian. And of course, our foundress and her companions were immigrants and ministered with and to immigrants. Our congregation endorsed a corporate stand on supporting immigrants and migrants. And of course, Catholic social teaching grounded in Scripture takes a very strong position on the rights of immigrants. The USCCB, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, actively pursues immigration reform, both through education and advocacy. So there are strong reasons that call us to act on behalf of immigrants today. I suggest that the first action to take, if we have not already, is to become informed and share accurate information with others. We cannot today rely on media, talk shows, and some misinformed and even hateful political or media figures. We need to be sure that we have the facts. For example, the Catholic Campaign for Immigration Reform publishes on its website, justiceforimmigrants.org, altogether, justiceforimmigrants.org, many resources, including one titled Countering the Myths. Just to name a few of those myths. Immigrants don't pay taxes. Fact. Between half and 3/4 of undocumented immigrants pay state and federal taxes. They also contribute to Medicare and provide about $7 billion a year to the Social Security Fund. They also, of course, pay sales and property taxes. Another myth: immigrants take jobs from Americans. What jobs, I ask? A majority of immigrants work in the agricultural and service sectors, which are low-wage jobs with few employee protections. Also, studies show that there is a decrease in the availability of low-skilled labor in the country, so immigrants fill this gap. And even in the current high unemployment situation in our country today, few educated, skilled U.S. citizens clamor for field and housekeeping work. When the UFW, the United Farm Workers of America, ran a well-publicized call for U.S. Americans to take field jobs, 11 people responded. Another myth: immigrants are a drain on social services. Actually, legal immigrants do not even qualify for welfare or health care for the first 5 years of residency in the United States, while undocumented immigrants never qualify for such benefits, even though, as I indicated before, they pay billions in taxes, including $7 billion a year in Social Security taxes alone. These are just a few of the prevailing myths. Another assumption is that all immigrants come here from south of our border. And while they may come in the largest numbers, due to poverty and the need to provide for their families, there are thousands of immigrants from Eastern Europe, from Russia, from African countries and others, including over 40,000 undocumented Irish immigrants in our country today. In addition to dispelling myths, the bishops are often asked what they don't understand about illegal. Why do they disrespect the rule of law? The Catholic campaign and the Interfaith campaign both support the right of a country to protect its borders. However, we also have the right to work to change laws which violate human dignity. The U.S. immigration system is broken. Few deny that. And it contributes to the exploitation of migrant workers, most of whom come here to find work to support their families. Why do they come illegally? They do so because there are insufficient visas to come legally. Our current system provides only 5,000 permanent visas for unskilled laborers to come to the United States. But the demand has been much higher, since until recently, when deportations have increased, as many as 300,000 undocumented people each year have been absorbed into our workforce. Comprehensive immigration reform would replace illegality with a system based on legal presence and legal entry. It would require those who have broken the law to get on the right side of the law by paying a fine, paying taxes, learning English, and waiting in a long line to have a chance to become a U.S. citizen. This path to citizenship is in the best interests of both migrants and our nation. I've spent time talking about the need to be informed because it is so essential in the current anti-immigrant sentiment in our country today. Unfortunately, there is no pending comprehensive immigration reform legislation in Congress, and there is not likely to be in the near future because it would be dead on arrival. In this pre-election year, candidates for public office either boast about their tough anti-immigrant positions and call for even more enforcement-only measures, or they don't dare express support for needed reform, even if they believe it is necessary. At this time, a lot of effort has to be put into fighting bad legislation, such as a mandated National Employer Electronic Verification System, commonly known as E-Verify. Currently, E-Verify is voluntary, and it is not widely used by employers because it is complicated, it takes time, and it's subject to error. Those who support comprehensive immigration reform, which includes legalization of unauthorized persons currently living and working in the United States, oppose making the E-Verify system mandatory, at least not without significantly reducing error rates in government databases, eliminating opportunities for employer misuses, and giving workers a fair and meaningful opportunity to correct false positives in the system. In September 2011, the House Judiciary Committee approved 22-13 along party lines House Resolution 2885, a proposal that would require all U.S. businesses to systematically confirm the legal status of new hires. This E-Verify would probably pass the House, but has little chance of passing in the Senate. Because it's a new and controversial bill, Speaker Boehner may not even bring it to the House floor for debate when attention right now is so focused on the national budget, the super committee, and election campaigns are in full swing. But Justice for Immigrants' action now is to contact Republican representatives and to ask them, in view of division in Republican ranks, to urge Speaker Boehner not to bring it to the floor. Next week, in fact, I'll be part of those who are making lobby visits to Catholic Republican representatives to urge them not to have Speaker Boehner bring that E-Verify bill to the floor. If it does see the light of day, however, calls to representatives in Congress urging opposition will be strongly encouraged. That would be a very important action to take. Another negative bill that might be introduced is to reduce the number of visas available for legal immigrants or for the diversity visa program, which is a lottery program. Now, how about the DREAM Act? We've heard a lot about the DREAM Act recently, in recent months. And given the unlikelihood of comprehensive immigration reform legislation in the near future, a lot of attention has been paid on the DREAM Act, and that is development, relief, and education for alien minors, but commonly known as the DREAM Act. And of course, it's a bill to legalize immigrant high school graduates of good moral character who were brought to the United States at a very young age without legal status. Simply put, young people who were brought here as children by adults and have lived most of their lives here. This is the world that they know, the country that they know, and who complete 2 years of college or military service would be eligible for their green card, that is, a legal permanent resident status. This DREAM Act once received bipartisan support, but it has become politicized in a strongly divided Congress. As I referred to before, in December 2010, there was hope for passage in the Senate, but it failed, to the great disappointment of all who worked for passage of the DREAM Act, and it was heartbreaking for dreamers, the young people themselves. But the effort goes on. I couldn't help but be struck by Father Rich's, when he was recounting the story of John Newman, how many doors were closed in John Newman's face, but he always found another door to open. And I think that's what's happening now with the efforts to pass the DREAM Act and hopefully comprehensive immigration reform. Right now, the Dream Sabbath is in full swing around the country, and this, of course, is in October as we're speaking. And perhaps you are aware of activities in the 40 dioceses and in 25 states across the country. Unfortunately, not all dioceses in all 50 states signed on to participate in the Catholic campaign. But all parishes were provided with bulletin inserts, homily helps, and materials to distribute, encouraging parishioners to call their representatives in Congress in support of the DREAM Act. Some states are making efforts to pass a DREAM Act specifically constructed for that state. For example, a California DREAM Act includes publicly funded financial aid. Maryland, and that's the state in which I reside, so I'm more familiar with the Maryland legislation, which was passed last year with the governor's approval. But enough signatures were garnered by those who opposed the bill to call for a voter referendum in November 2012 to repeal the bill. So the Maryland DREAM Act would provide tuition equity for all students, including children of undocumented immigrants who have been residing in the state for at least 3 years while attending high school. It would enable young people to afford a college education at the in-state tuition rate and contribute to their community. The Maryland Catholic Conference is using this time period to educate Catholic parishes and urge Catholics to oppose the referendum to repeal the DREAM Act in 2012. An action that could be taken here is to find out if similar legislation is pending in the state in which you reside, and it could be done by contacting your state's Catholic Conference. Another job that, another bill that could be introduced into the as legislation by the time you're reviewing this is by Senator Dianne Feinstein, an Ag Jobs bill. In other words, to provide worker permits to illegal immigrant farm workers. Senator Feinstein wants to issue a blue card and legal residence for up to 5 years, but not a path to citizenship. And this is why there is hesitancy on the part of the Justice for Immigrants campaign to support a separate Ag Jobs bill. Again, the United Farm Workers of America may not support it, favoring the guest worker program in the comprehensive immigration bill introduced by Robert Menendez in New Jersey, which would allow workers to earn legal status. But Feinstein maintains that permanent residency is not politically feasible in this Congress, and worker permits are needed. Segments of our agriculture are highly dependent on the immigrant workforce, almost 70% of which are undocumented. I also want to mention at this time, even though it's not about the DREAM Act, but what is currently happening in our country right now in the state of Alabama, and you may be aware of this from the news, but the last week of September, the state of Alabama passed just a really horrendous bill, anti-immigrant bill. We thought that the Arizona law was damaging. The Alabama law is even worse, and particularly because it impacts children. And under this act in Alabama, local police would be required to act as federal immigration enforcement agents by demanding proof of legal status from anyone who appears to be foreign. Public school administrators have to require to check the legal status of their students and their parents. When this bill was passed, the day afterwards, some principals reported that many of their students didn't even show up, their Hispanic students, for school. And others came in tears, and they were having to work with these students who were so terribly upset because they were afraid that by the time they returned home, their parents might have been taken. So it's just a terrible bill. And just this past week, the New York Times had an article saying that many Hispanic families are even leaving the state. There has been a lot of reaction against it and pushback, especially from faith communities, including the Catholic community and bishops. But I suggest that we keep paying attention to this. What kind of a country would we be if state after state would take legislation like this? In fact, one of the comments that was made was that it means that Alabama, with a reputation of resisting extending civil rights to African Americans, is about to gain a reputation as a state that violates the civil rights of Latinos. It means that Alabama is now a place where questions regarding ethnic cleansing will be asked, and it's not about some faraway land. As I was preparing these thoughts for today, I couldn't help but reflect on the history of our country. From its beginning, both its blessings and its wounds. And all of us love our country. We love its promise of freedom and opportunity. And many of us, our families, have benefited from that. But for the first colonizers, who were immigrants actually, oppressed and tried to decimate American Indians, the ones who inhabited this land for thousands of years. Then the abhorrent system of slavery, the sin of African slave trade and an economic system based on slavery. And the wounds of both of these oppressions remain today. Now, in the 21st century, an anti-immigrant wave, which is worsened by our economic downturn and high unemployment, is what we are facing. In such a time of financial and economic crisis, we tend to look for a scapegoat. And we have turned to the immigrant as scapegoat, especially those with darker skins and whose first language is not English. In his time, Francis reached out to the outcast, personified by the leper. We recall his admonition, "I have done what was mine to do. Now ask Christ, what is yours to do?" In our time, the gospel and our church urge us to reach out to our immigrant sisters and brothers, both in charity and in justice. So just to give a summary of possible actions quickly. First, be informed and share accurate information with others. Oppose the E-Verify legislation. If you have a Republican representative, ask him or her to encourage Speaker Boehner not to bring it to the floor. It is too divisive and controversial. Support the DREAM Act when and where possible. Postcards to the President and members of Congress are available now on the Justice for Immigrants website. Continue to encourage Congress and others that what is most needed to fix our broken immigration system is comprehensive immigration reform. I encourage you to visit the JFI website. You might also visit the Interfaith Immigration Coalition website, interfaithimmigrationcoalition.org. You might also visit the FAN website, Franciscan Action Network, with whom I'm working these days. And pay attention to the alerts on OS Connect, by OSF Connect by Sister Betty Kane, because Betty keeps us alerted to immediate actions that need to be taken. By the time you are watching this session and reflecting on it, situations may have changed. There may be new legislation. There may be more hopeful legislation, we would hope so. But I encourage you to pay attention to OSF Connect to see what might be immediate. And finally, prayer is very important. We need to pray for immigrants, yes. But unlike the senator who said he would pray but not support the DREAM Act, May we, Sisters of St. Francis and our companions, both pray and act on behalf of immigrants in our country today. Thank you.